Joining me now, First Class Father, Pete Hegseth. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Great to be here.
All right, let's start right here. How many kids do you have and how old?
I have 7 kids. We have a blended family. We each have 3 from previous marriages and 1 together, ranging from ages 10 to 2. So it's 10, 9, 7, 6, 5, 4, 2. So it is quite a household when everyone's together, which is as much as we can throughout the year.
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm actually the youngest of 7 myself in a blended family, so I know a little bit about it. What type of sports or activities are they all into?
Oh my goodness, everything. I mean, the natural instincts of kids are to, they want to hit the devices and they want to hit the games, right? And what I try to do is minimize that as much as possible, get them outside. They love playing. You know how we do as fathers, we impose on them the passions of our life. So they love basketball and football, baseball, because I played all of those sports. And so we just get out and do that as much as possible. In fact, I have basketball camps. The first camp I did was the Pete Hegseth NBA All-Star Coronavirus Hoops Camp when everything was shut down. And for an hour and a half a day, we went out and worked on different skills. But they're kids, they want to get outside and jump in the pool. They want to jump on the trampoline. They want to ride their bikes. I just try to get them out and keep them as active as possible.
Yeah, good stuff, Pete. And if you could, just take a minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
Sure. Pete Hegseth. Right now I'm the co-host of Fox and Friends Weekend at the Fox News Channel, and I do commentary there. I also host a bunch of documentaries at Fox Nation. TV is a totally accidental career for me. I love this country, and I love our God, and I want to do everything I can to advance God and country. And somehow that brought me to television, but it was after running a number of vets organizations, which came after my service in the military. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan and Guantanamo Bay. So I just want to be of service, and I'm passionate about the things this country gives all of us. And somehow it landed to be on TV. I also wrote one book in 2016 called In the Arena. And then I have another book coming out called American Crusade, which is really an update to that argument, where we are as a country and what we need to do to save it.
Yeah, I'm going to hit on your new book in a minute here, too. And I want to say thank you for your service before I forget to say that. And I really do admire your hustle because you seem to be everywhere. So when did fatherhood come into this picture for you? About how old were you when you first became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Right before I turned 30, it does shake your life because you realize what an important role it is, how so many of the things you think are important aren't. And you mix that with my own experience in Iraq and on the battlefield, where you come back and you think a lot of the things in the modern world are silly, vapid. People are obsessed about stupid things. And so kids sharpen that even more. In fact, Gunnar, my firstborn, I was gone for his age of 2, basically, in Afghanistan. And coming back home to see him was a huge motivator. And, it changed my life in that I know that I now have a chance to give an imprint onto a human soul and fill that soul with the values and the respect, the discipline, and the fortitude that I think citizens of this great country and Christians are going to need in the 21st century in order to advance the things that we care about. So, yeah, I wanted to play sports and I wanted to be good. And I think you can teach excellence through sports. I love that as a vehicle. But and younger, that would have been my obsession with raising kids, is how good can they be? It's just not the case for me anymore. I want them to excel in whatever they do, but way more important to me is raising great human beings who know that I love them, that God loves them, and that they live in the greatest country in human history. And they, when they grow up, need to do their part.
Yeah, well said, Pete. And, so you guys in the military, you have kind of that service before self mentality built into you guys. For us civilians, especially, I think the first time we ever get a sense of that is through fatherhood. It's where we really get that idea of putting somebody ahead of us, even more so through marriage, is when you become a father. And I agree with you here. I think we have a diminished family unit in this country. We have a diminished view of God. And I think if we could tighten up our family units and get God back into our life here, Pete, I think we'd see a lot of our problems start to go away.
100%. I mean, listen, it is, and this is part of my book too, not to make a plug, but the more you rip God out of our public square, even out of our churches, out of our institutions, it has to be replaced by something. And, certain people want to replace it with government or with control or with other false gods of this earth that are ultimately deceiving. And so getting back into the Word, getting back into the Bible, sharing the amazing history and faith of the human story through the Bible, going to church, reminding kids that there is something greater than themselves, that prayer is powerful. I think that is number one in educating kids to be the kind of kids we want them to be. Because if we don't have a shared narrative, if we don't understand, we got kids going through government schools or going through our society right now who could not tell you who Noah and Moses and Abraham and David and Solomon and Jesus and Socrates and Plato and Cicero, who are these people of Western civilization? And if you don't know that, it's hard to preserve what makes this individual freedom, limited government, free market experiment called America happen. You're seduced by the easy ideas of the moment, like free stuff, or like moral relativism, that there's nothing right or there's nothing wrong. So faith and family is huge. And listen, we live in a broken world. I'm the first person to admit I'm a sinner in need of God's grace every single day. I think of that as a husband. I think of that as a father. I think of that as a son and a brother. And in this broken world, all we can do is take the next step the next day with the people around us that we love and create the kind of environment that pumps out kids that fear God and love their country. And that's certainly what I'm committed to.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Pete. And I think the kids in college, I think our academia, they could probably recite Howard Zinn's People's History of America more than they could the names that you just mentioned there. And that's kind of sad. And that's why I love the fact that during this homeschooling thing, although the teachers have been doing a phenomenal job here, they have stepped up. I love the fact that we could start our day with the Pledge of Allegiance and that we could start with an Our Father. And I love what you did with the Hegseth's School for Higher Learning.
Yes.
What was the genesis of that? What's the feedback been on that?
The feedback's been amazing. We've done way more than has been published on Fox Nation. If you go to Fox Nation, you can watch 5 episodes of it. It's right over here in our personal library where I do the library lecture for the Hegseth School for Higher Learning. Listen, it was a moment in time. It was a recognition that, okay, whoa, these kids are not going to be at school. We're in charge of school. I've always been passionate about education. If I don't take this moment, I may never get it again in this kind of way. So like you said, we start with the pledge, we start with the national anthem, we do a Bible reading and prayer, we discuss what we read and what we pray about. They go into their regular schoolwork, but then I pull them in for a lecture where, Dad holds court on and whatever topic I deem sort of interesting or important. And it's politics, religion, war, history, economics, and trying to make it fun for 10, 9, 7, 8-year-olds who, they barely understand the concept of politics or Republicans and Democrats, let alone the left versus the right. But we talk about money, we talk about the Bible, the history of the Bible, American exceptionalism, George Washington, the founding of our country, World War II, we talk about my service in the Army, just the kind of things that you talk about in a glancing way with your kids when you're having dinner or you're in the car, but you really maybe don't have a captive audience where you make it fun for them, make it come alive, you ask some Q&A. So we did a few of them on Fox Nation, but we continue to do them to this day, and I think it's a helpful thing for them to get a little dose of what their father and mother are thinking about and believe.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't think it could be a better time than right now for your book to actually be coming out here. American Crusade, Our Fight to Stay Free. I don't think we've ever been this divided politically. It's so bad right now what's going on in our country. I mean, I had the president's son, Eric Trump, here on my podcast, and I just got destroyed on social media for it. And it's like, all we were talking about was fatherhood and family life. We didn't get into any politics of anything. And it's just, and I always get the threats, I'm unfollowing, I'm unsubscribing. But whenever I have like a liberal or a Democrat on the show, I never get that from the other side. So what was the genesis of the book, American Crusade, Our Fight to Stay Free? Where can we find it? What is it all about?
Well, anywhere books are sold, you can go to PeteHegseth.com. Anywhere you want, you can get a copy. The genesis of American Crusade was based in large part about what you're talking about. We've never been more divided, and there's a reason for that. And the battle for the soul of our country is what's at stake. I wrote a book 4 years ago called In the Arena. I used a Teddy Roosevelt speech that you're probably familiar with, a lot of people are familiar with. It's actually called Citizenship in a Republic. And I remember reading that speech and feeling like we need that today. Roosevelt wrote about it 100 years ago, so I tried to make that speech come alive. And it made the case for basically 4 basic ingredients for citizenship. You got to be willing to work, the dignity of work, the willingness to fight, to stay free, whether it's by force of arms or by, fighting bureaucracy or just areas in your life where freedom is restricted. We got to have large patriotic families. Demographics matter. And then you got to believe in something greater than yourself. The rights we have are not endowed by government, but from a creator. If you can forge that into citizens, you're going to have a great republic. And I kind of made the happy case for that. Then Donald Trump crashed the party, make America great again. The left and the media reacted and exposed themselves for how radical they really are. And so you now have a very clear, stark contrast between what Donald Trump represents, which I truly believe are just bedrock American values. Do you believe in borders or not? Do you believe in citizenship or not? Should we stand for the anthem or not? Is God welcome in our public sphere or not? Do you believe in capitalism or do you believe in socialism? Do you support the police or not? These are not radical ideas, but this is effectively what Trump gets hit for. And at this moment in 2020, either we stand by those bedrock principles in our politics or we lose politically, which is basically the last place where God-fearing, patriotic Christians win. If you look at our education system, which has ripped God out, if you look at social media, if you look at Hollywood, if you look at our culture, you look at our businesses, which are fully woke, you even look at our military that oftentimes bends to political correctness. There are a lot of places where the left has totally captured. Donald Trump was able to win almost miraculously because of the red hats in 2016. If he can do it again in 2020, we have a chance to turn the tide and save America. Otherwise, the left wants to literally strangle this American experiment, turn it into something completely different. So the book dissects kind of where we are. There's a lot of fun stories, personal stories in there throughout. But where we are, what the left has done for a huge chunk of the book, so all the isms, socialism, genderism, multiculturalism, every ism, Islamism, and then it breaks down what you got to do about how to fight. And I use the term American Crusade intentionally. It's intentionally provocative. It needs to be a holy war for the righteous cause of freedom. And it's not going to be for the weak or the meek. You got to stand boldly for what we believe in. And of course, Donald Trump has charted the course for that. This is the guy who taught us all how to grow a Trump spine, to see something and say something and not be politically correct. We got to channel that. And that's the argument that the book makes. So I don't know that we're getting any closer to unity, but that's not because Donald Trump or his supporters have gotten more radical. It's because we've stayed true on what America represents, and the left has gone further into loony land. And their arguments make no sense unless you hate America. And that's the battle that we have right now.
Yeah, and Pete, I'm going to drop a link in the description of this podcast episode, so my listeners should tap the link, get over there and buy a copy. I'm also going to be giving away a copy of the book on my Instagram account at Alec_Lace. And boy, do I miss the philosophy of the Democratic Party that was ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. And it seems to they have gotten so far away from that principle. Reining it back into you here as a dad, Pete, what type of disciplinarian are you as a father, and is it different than the discipline style that you grew up with?
One of the biggest compliments I got a couple of months ago was that the rumor in the neighborhood is that Pete is a tough disciplinarian. You don't get away with anything at his house, which I love. So it's not just my kids, it's my kids' friends who I love and I respect, and we have fun when they're here. But yeah, I'm a disciplinarian. I really am. I probably even more so than my dad, who I revere. He did more of the son, I'm disappointed in you approach. Which worked on me a lot, so don't get me wrong. But then I went through the whole military thing. My basketball experience in college was almost like going into the military. Had just kind of the school of hard knocks. And I think if there was one thing I came out of my high school years with, I was a little soft and not quite ready for the sharp edges of the modern world. And I want my kids, while we take care of them and we ensure they're okay at one level, we also need to start fortifying them to be gritty, to be tough, to take risks, to stand up to bullies, not just, call for a mediator and cower in the corner, to be they're the opposite of toxic masculinity, which is real masculinity, which is not toxic at all for the boys and for girls supporting their every endeavor in whatever way they want to explore. But yeah, I got rules and I enforce them mercilessly. For one time you got to be home and you got to clean the basement every night, and here's the chores that you got to knock out. You got to make your bed every morning. You got to say please and thank you. You got to ask to be excused from the table, and there are consequences if you don't. Because I think when you give good parameters to kids, they respond really well. They just need left and right limits. And when they have that, then they have a roadmap to excel. And it's a challenge, in a blended family. You've got stepkids and kids, and finding a balance of how you manage those relationships. I'm not going to tell you I have that all figured out, but you manage your own emotions. You start to learn who the kids are and how they respond. But the more fair you are about the rules with everybody, it sort of creates a coherence to the whole group, which is what we're going for.
Yeah, that's awesome, Pete. I know I watched last year. You did the swim in the Hudson River with the Navy SEALs. I've had a whole bunch of Navy SEALs on the podcast here. I love those guys' mentality.
Yeah.
What was that like for you to complete that with the SEALs? And are you guys doing it again this year?
We are doing it again this year in August. It's still on the books. This year I'm going to train for it. And I've already started. That was my big mistake last year. I heard about it about a week before, and I go, I'm a good swimmer. It'll be fine. Come on, how bad can it be? And these guys are world class. I'm a ground pounded infantryman from the Army. I'm not a Navy SEAL. I was a lifeguard. I could swim. All that stuff is fine. But man, we jumped in that Hudson, and I'm just glad I got out the other end. And last year I needed some help, and people saw it on TV. We didn't hide it. A pull here and a drag here for certain portions just to make it around the current. There was one moment when I was 50 meters from the Statue of Liberty. I could see the Statue of Liberty. We had to get around it swimming. And 20 minutes later, I was still 50 meters from the Statue of Liberty because the current was so strong. And one of these SEALs just said, grab my shorts and hang on. And I did. And he just went, he plowed through that water like nothing I've ever seen. So much respect for them. We raised a bunch of money for the cause. We did it live on the show. Our goal is to do it again this year. And my goal is to need zero assistance in doing so, which I think I can do. So we're getting ready for it. It was cool.
Yeah, very cool. What kind of plans or goals do you have here for yourself for the future, Pete?
Plans and goals for the future. Listen, I want to be a great husband and a great father, and I want to do everything I can for this great country. I don't have a 5-year plan. I couldn't tell you where I'll be. I am just so grateful to have the opportunity and platform that I do at Fox News Channel, at Fox and Friends on the weekends, and at Fox Nation, where I can pursue passion projects like things we're doing in Israel about the state of Israel and the real story of what's going on there. So I couldn't, if you'd asked me 5 years ago where I'd been, we wouldn't even have been talking about Donald Trump and his presidency and how it changed the whole game, right? So I don't think we can even anticipate it. What I try to tell my kids and what I try to live myself is find what you're passionate about. And they're too young to really understand that yet, but they'll get there. What you're passionate about and charge at it. Yeah, you got to make a living at some point. And yeah, there's practical factors in life. But the more passionate you are about it, the more you invest yourself into it, the more likely you are to get a chance to maybe someday do it. So I'm just, listen, I think we're at a crossroads in this country, and to get a chance to have a microphone where I am is pretty cool. And I'm just going to keep fighting, never backing down, done apologizing for anything that we represent, and have a little fun in the process.
Yeah, what I'm trying to get at there too, Pete, is to see if you have any political aspirations yourself there. Because I asked a fellow Army guy, my man Sean Parnell, this question on the podcast. He said, no, I'm not getting into politics. And then a few months later, he entered the arena. So I'm trying to see if you would ever consider a political career yourself.
I would never say no. I'm certainly not angling for it. I did run once in 2012. I put a little bit of it in the book. I came in third at the convention, and then the guy who I lost to had the biggest single statewide defeat in Minnesota history. So I lost to the biggest loser of all time. I did not do well. But I'll be honest about this. Early in my life, I sort of really wanted to run, and I wouldn't necessarily use the word calculate, but I was, hey, could I run for this or maybe that, or how soon? And that could be a cage. It almost gets you mentally thinking, okay, I've got to position myself for this, and maybe this year, and what about that race? And it's always reaching and grabbing. And I am happily completely liberated from that. If there were to be a moment, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line where it made sense to put my name on the ballot, I want to do it when I'm ready, when I think I would be the right person in that job to contribute for the country, and when I can do it on my terms, where it's not, I'm going to apologize for this, or, just charge out of the gate and say, this is what I stand for, this is what I represent, and if you're honored enough to vote for me, great. But it doesn't pay as well, I'll say that. So that's a whole thing. You got mortgages and kids and life. It's just not that simple. But, if that's where God called me someday down the line, I would certainly look at it. But I'm not itching for it at all right now.
Yeah, I think one thing we definitely learned with Donald Trump is timing is everything, as we saw with him. So last thing I want to hit you with here, Pete, I'd love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for the new father or for that about-to-be dad who's out there listening?
For the new father or about-to-be dad, I think if you had a father who did well by you, you would probably be well served to remind yourself why they did well by you, what it was that you valued about them. And I know for my father, it was just the sheer time that he invested in us. The way he brought us along with the things he loved, and they became the things we loved, but we also had the latitude to pursue other things if we wanted to. And there were always the basic bedrock values that they instilled. It was simple stuff. It wasn't, he wasn't reading from a book. He wasn't watching TED Talks on it. He was just, his instincts were to love his kids and be there for them. If you didn't have a dad who had that, I know it's a different story, and that's I think you can fill the void of what you were missing. But I think I'll tell you this, try not to take it for granted, especially in the early years, because I can attest to the fact that for many years I kind of did. Hey, they're too young. There's not a whole lot I can do. I don't have any regrets. I'm not saying I missed out on anything necessarily, but every moment you have is a moment to sort of cherish them exactly where they are in that snapshot. They're going to get old soon, and they're not going to reply to your texts, and they're not going to want to hang out. So as much as you can while they're that age, enjoy it. It is nothing but a blessing.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. It's been an honor for me. I got to say, Pete Hegseth, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you so much for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks for what you do on this show, because highlighting fatherhood, when you talk about fixing problems in our country, in our culture, it starts with dads being there for their kids. So I salute you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Pete.